Have you fallen into an open manhole recently? Do you find yourself in the company of strangers? Well, then you might very well be in the feature underground. Despite appearances, my name is Hunter Lanier, and I am here after somewhat of a hiatus with a brand new movie review, this time of Osgood Perkins' The Monkey. This is, of course, his follow-up to his surprisingly successful film last year, Longlegs. Although this is a drastically different movie than Longlegs. Even though these are both marketed as horror films, Longlegs was legitimately a scary movie, I think. The Monkey is, let there be no doubt, a comedy, albeit a grotesquely violent one, but a comedy nonetheless. Now, the first thing this movie made me think of, oddly enough, was an essay by George Orwell. Now, the exact name of this essay, I regret to inform you, I cannot remember, nor is my wonderful bookmarking technique very helpful in finding where this exact essay is and where this exact point I'm trying to make is located. Nonetheless, what Orwell talks about in this article is, which was written in the 40s, by the way, is a new trend of adults viewing their childhood as the defining period of their life, from which all of their adult angsts and quirks and errors and issues stem from. Everything comes from childhood. And if I remember correctly, Orwell attributes this to the growing comfort of modern life and suburbia, that something like being bullied in the 8th grade becomes the defining moment of your life, the big bang from which all of your neuroses stems from. This being quite unlike how it was before. There was a consistent struggle throughout your entire life for most people to even survive. And without this constant struggle, childhood becomes this weird fixation point. And that essay was written in the 40s, and I think that has only gotten more and more relevant. And perhaps no one else in our modern pop culture is more associated with that type of thinking than Stephen King. And The Monkey is, of course, written and directed by Osgood Perkins, but based on a short story from Stephen King. And The Monkey does not deviate very much from the Stephen King aesthetic and mythos. Stephen King has made something of a career from intensifying adolescent trauma until it becomes a literal monster, and The Monkey is no different. Only instead of a homicidal clown, you get a fairly innocent, albeit somewhat creepy, toy wind-up monkey. A funny aside, I did read a story in which Osgood Perkins talks about how the original monkey in the movie was supposed to be the traditional wind-up cymbal monkey, but Disney copyrighted that particular classic toy for Toy Story. I thought that was amusing because who knows what Disney has copyrighted at this point. The film's monkey, instead of playing the cymbals, plays a tin drum. And with every rhythmic meeting of stick to skin, someone dies. But, and this seems to be the only rule, never the person that turns the key. Now, of course, they don't die of something as banal as a heart attack or slipping in the shower, because that would be boring. They die in the goriest, least plausible manner that the laws of slapstick, etched forever with ketchup into a corn dog, will allow. I'm not going to spoil all of the fun kills in the movie, as they are essentially the movie's main attraction. But I will say, just as an example, one of the very early deaths in the movie involves a man's intestines being pulled across the room until taut. So that's what you're in for. It is worth mentioning, as I alluded to in the beginning of this video, this movie is a comedy. So all of this violence, it is cartoonish, Looney Tunes, over-the-top violence. It's not hyper-realistic, uncomfortable, long legs violence. Now, when we first meet the monkey, it's basically a generational albatross tight around the necks of the Shelburn family. the two Shelburn boys, Hal and Bill, Hal being a neurotic, gentle type, and Bill being a schoolyard bully that unfortunately goes home with Hal at the end of the day. After appearing in the boys' lives, the monkey wreaks havoc until the boys eventually bury the monkey deep in a hole. Although the monkey can be buried, the trauma it inflicted cannot. And all of that deeply buried trauma continues to affect the boys' lives until their adulthood becomes as miserable as their childhood, and the monkey once again arrives. Misery being its natural habitat. Where the movie has its most fun, and therefore the audience, is when it's acting out America's Funniest Home Demises with the monkey's victims. Each one is a Jerry Lewis splatterfest of pratfalls, sight gags, and severed legs flying through the air like boomerangs. In fact, in the movie's finest moment, I think, there is a woman whose head is on fire, running past, screaming all the while, a mounted bear head wearing sunglasses. As she runs by the bear, her illuminated head enters and exits the bear's dark lenses, not unlike the sun coming and going on a pleasant beach day. It's those little moments of dark comedy you can tell Osgood Perkins is made the movie for. The problem is that everything in between these very inventive, imaginative, fun kill scenes lacks that same creativity and inventiveness. In fact, what is essentially the heart of the movie is this familial drama of absentee fathers and sons, and righting the wrongs of the past, and sins of the father, and all of this generational drama that simply is not interesting. And the movie also has some tonal issues where you don't always know when it's being serious with the family drama. Pretty much all of the comedy outside of the slapstick monkey killing people scenes is just not funny. Theo James plays the twin brothers, Hal and Bill. And Bill is what can be generously described as an unfunny Saturday morning cartoon villain. Theo James is pretty good in the movie as Hal, but as he also plays Bill, he's pretty awful as Bill. And the character is written terribly, but it is funny to see an actor who's pretty good in the movie and then also terrible in the movie as a different character. It's not something you see very often. I think you can even tell Osgood Perkins himself is bored with everything in the movie that isn't the slapstick. And as ridiculous as the film's premise is, even in that context, the ridiculousness of the character relationships is unbelievable. I think the best course of action the movie could have taken, given how at odds with itself it seems, is that it should have just leaned fully into the slapstick instead of indulging in these tired metaphors of childhood trauma and trying to mine emotion from this familial drama. The movie has some charming aspects. Like a lot of Stephen King stuff, it very much encapsulates the traditional American suburban experience. There's a part in the movie where the kids go on their big weekend adventure, which is going to a hibachi grill. The movie does do one other thing that irritates me, and it's something that has just started to get on my nerves, and maybe it's already on your nerves, which is the trope of contrasting really horrific things happening, or maybe just big action sequences, with lighthearted music. In this case, you get a lot of what I am a fan of, a lot of 50s rock and roll. You get a lot of Little Richard and Sam Cooke. I think I would put The Monkey in the same category I would put another movie that came out this year, Companion, in that it's a movie that feels very fun and enjoyable while you're watching it, but ultimately somewhat disposable. And these movies like The Monkey and Companion, they come out and they get good reviews, but I just wish they would make a little more of an effort to not just entertain in a superficial way, but to really do something different and leave an impression. I think that is my gripe. These movies, they don't really leave an impression. They come and they go. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Monkey. I wish I had seen a more interesting movie for the first review back from hiatus. We do have Mickey 17 coming out soon. I have not received a press invite to that one yet, but I do anticipate one, so hopefully I'll be reviewing that one coming up soon. Don't forget to like this video and comment and subscribe. Until then, as always, I would like to remind you that every day underground is a good day.